everyone. Welcome back to another episode with the Crime and Coffee Couple. My name's Allison.
And my name's Mike.
Hi, Mike.
Hey, Al. How are you, babe?
I am glad to be sitting here with you in 2025. Happy New Year, everyone. We're back to somewhat regular recording. We were pre-recording a lot.
Not that it matters to anybody watching, because you always had your stuff on Sundays and Wednesdays and all that good stuff. At least as close as I could, because when I have to plan things like way in advance, you never know what's going to happen.
You just never know.
Somebody mentioned at some point, like, hey, just so you know, I think the Apple Podcasts don't have their extra stuff. And I was like, oh, crap. So I had to go to the website and just hit publish, because Apple's kind of a pain in the butt. Sorry, Apple, if you're listening. Probably the CEO of Apple's listening.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah.
Yeah, he's just keeping monitor of all the podcasts on the platform. But yeah, everything's going good. And I noticed that we don't have a little tree behind me anymore. So
we do not.
It's all gone if you're watching on the video.
We got back from Chicago. We spent the holidays in Chicago. We were gone for a solid 12 days, which if you're staying at anyone's house for 12 days, it starts to get a little long.
Especially your in-laws.
Well, I love my in-laws. We've been together almost 30 years, so I've known them since I was a child. But I'm a homebody, and my social battery needs a little bit of recharge, and we're going there from morning to night, just visiting with everyone, which is awesome. We had a fantastic time. So awesome. I don't want to sound like I'm ungrateful. I was so thankful to be able to see everyone, the babies of the family, our friends and cousins. And it's funny because our kids are always like, oh, we'd move to Illinois in a second. And it's like, you're here for a blip of 12 days. We're on vacation. So it's like living in Florida, it's always perpetually sunny. And I know people are like, that's a ridiculous thing.
So annoying. It's always so nice outside.
That is a ridiculous thing to complain about. But sometimes it wears on you. Like, you just want a solid cloudy day to park yourself on the couch and not feel guilty about it.
Yeah, folks, Allison's one of those perpetual people that always thinks things are better on the other side of the fence.
It's true.
It's always like, the grass is greener. Things are going to be better if I do this. If only I had this, or if only I bought this one thing. Not that you always want to buy things, but it's just an example. Okay, so settle down over there.
I'm settled. Purchase. I'm very settled.
And she's always like, I think I would like these gray days. And I was like, there's no way. Like, we lived there for what, 20 years?
25. And yeah. I never really minded. Like, some people would suffer from the seasonal depression. I didn't have that. The cold would wear on me by, March. I was done with it. I think perfect scenario would be we would live in Chicago from like maybe June to January, and then Florida for the rest of the year.
Like early January. I remember living in Illinois and being like totally done with winter after Christmas.
Right. I would agree. Right after the new year.
Yeah. Once kids have to go back to school and stuff, it's just like, all right, we're done with winter. Can we just move on to spring? That'd be great.
Yeah, totally.
Like here in Florida, we don't experience any autumn or fall or spring or anything like that. It's always just summer or not summer. And right now we're in not summer, which is beautiful.
But it's funny because our highs and lows in the day could be as different as 40 degrees. Like, we're talking in the 30s in the morning and then the 70s in the afternoon, which is insane.
It's awesome. Once the sun comes out, it like bakes everything. Everything's nice and toasty.
Yeah, and it's nice. I told Mike we would be very unhealthy if we went back to Illinois.
All I felt like doing was sitting around just eating and just snoozing.
It was rainy a lot.
Oh,
just
it was nice.
Really cold. I mean, so dark. So dark. I felt like I was in Alaska.
Freaking like 4:15. It felt like it was 7:30 at night.
And our dog was lazy as could be. She didn't move. And granted, she did have a neck injury while we were there because
we had to
she's
go to
a little
the ER.
bee.
Had to go to the doggy ER like during Christmas time. Crazy.
We had just made homemade hot cocoa to watch the Polar Express. It's just this tradition we have. Literally just put it in our mugs. We were going to sit in my mother-in-law's bed. We were backing up, and all of a sudden our dog started snarling. And granted, she's 6 pounds. At my mother-in-law's 12-pound dog. And within seconds, our dog started yelping and crying, and she just could not stop. We put her on the ground. It turned out we had to find an emergency vet. It was highly stressful. She cried the whole time, and she had a neck injury. So.
And it was around the holidays, so like some of the regular vets, because our sister-in-law is like a vet tech, and she like was helping us try to find places, and she's like, "Oh, that one's not open." We're like, "No, they're sending us to this one, and it's got like a 4-hour wait." And I was like, "Well, I guess we got to wait till 2 a.m."
Yeah, it was like 8 p.m. and Mike's like, "They could get us in at 2 a.m." And mind you, she is continuously crying.
No.
Oh yeah, anytime she moved, she was crying. I was in the bedroom with her. I was like almost dry heaving. I was so stressed.
She did do that.
I promise
That's
you.
True.
So and it
Everything
got like
Allison
really
says-
hot in Mike's mom's room. I
Yeah.
like yanked my sweater off. Granted, I had a t-shirt underneath. It was just, our daughter was crying. It was just highly stressful.
Yeah, we love our little baby.
And we're just, oh, and here's another funny thing. The doctor's like, so we'll give her an injection so that it takes away the pain right away. And then blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, right on board. You do that. And Mike's like, wait a second. Wait, hold, pump the brakes. We got it. How much is this injection?
I never said quote unquote pump the brakes. So
He didn't say that.
in your head. So I was just like, well, let's find out how much the injection is first before we start going injection happy and start getting yes to everything, because we want our baby. I know
Out of
now,
pain.
folks. I definitely want my dog healthy and happy and as quickly as possible. But like sometimes, you know how they could just like sell you something a little extra, like this will do it right away, and then they get to your
Yeah.
heartstrings, and it's like,
Yeah, we want our dog out of pain right away.
well,
That's
yeah.
the goal.
And if she took a pill, it'd probably be fine in 15 minutes. Like I'm willing to save $500 for 15 minutes of pain. Like I would
So-
take it on for the family if it was me.
Of course, our sister-in-law's checking in. She's the vet, she works at the vet, and I'm texting her. I said, oh, and get this. Mike's trying to price check the injection to help her pain over my dead body.
What if it was like $1,000?
I don't care.
Oh
I
my
want
God.
my dog to be. We have this thing in my family where they'll be like, would you give Poppy away for $2 million or $2 billion? $2 billion. And I said, absolutely not. I would not. It's like she's my daughter.
Yeah, but I'd be like, well, we could probably buy 7 of her, and
She's not Poppy.
I'd buy 20 more and be like, just pick one of them. Like you'll love them just as much. Ugh,
Nope.
I could. Probably,
She lives in my heart and
No,
soul.
I love her.
How dare you?
I love her as well. I love her, but you know what? Dogs are dogs, and sometimes, I mean, I wouldn't sell my kids. But
I have a question for you.
What?
How the hell dare you?
where do you get off?
Where do you get off?
Yeah, she's our darling, as she is. But
So the point is, we're glad to be back. We're glad to be back with you, giving you content, all being together as a cozy little family.
But Allison, do you understand that they've never experienced us being not here?
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay.
They like to know this information, so you
Okay.
just be quiet over there.
I know.
So on that note, Mike, are you ready to get into this?
I think so. I think I'll just, I'm always ready. I mean, I just like, if you're watching on the video here, you see I look like a schlub. SCHLUB is how I smell that.
Schlub.
And I got my pajama pants on, and you look all cutesy and demure. And
well, one of us showered this morning. Let's just say that.
I just saw you naked no less than 20 minutes ago.
And it wasn't Mike.
Oh, it was a sight to see. It's not me put together.
No, you weren't the one that showered this morning.
I wasn't naked either.
50% of us is clean.
Yeah, that's right. So I showered yesterday.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah,
All
yay
right.
me.
So this is the story of the death of Ashley Fallis. So to some, celebrating a new year can be symbolic of a clean slate, a fresh start, a chance to make a step back take a step back and gain perspective on how we're spending our days.
So how do you spell phallus?
Fallis.
Okay.
So the point is that to some people, the new year might just be yet again another day, and to others, it could mean a lot. We might do dry January, take a look at our drinking habits, start exercising, eating better, etc. For me, it's all about organization. I step back and say, how could I do life easier?
Holy cow, no kidding it is. If you've been around this house, you'll see she's been like a whirling dervish.
I'm on a rampage. So again, we're just trying to maybe reflect on the previous year, take some time to clear both mental and physical clutter as we set our new goals for the upcoming year. In this case, however, a family's world was ripped and turned upside down when they learned of the sudden and tragic death of their loved one that came within less than an hour of welcoming in the new year. So it was December 31st, 2011. It was New Year's Eve in less than 1 hour from ringing in the new year of 2012. So we're looking at, 14 years ago or 12 years ago, excuse me. So 28-year-old Ashley Fallis was having a great time. She was dancing and smiling in the living room of her Colorado home with her husband, Tom, and they were actually hosting a party that night. Everyone was having a great time. It's festive and they're dancing and eating and drinking. So sadly, though, shortly after midnight, the brand new year began with absolute tragedy when Ashley, the mother of 3, was dead as a result of a single gunshot wound to the head. But Tom was insisting that Ashley killed herself, while those who knew and love her are firm on the fact that there is absolutely no way that Ashley would have left her kids voluntarily and taken her own life.
Yeah, I wonder if people ever say that in the background when somebody actually did take their own life. People like they would have never. Cops. If you're like, you're an EMS or whatever, if you can chime in the comments somewhere, whether it's Spotify or Instagram, just give us some comments and say like, do people do that? Like a lot of times we hear it like this, where it's like they would never.
Right.
And it's somebody that would probably never.
And I think it depends on the circumstances of the situation, how they were found, etc. This is just a different picture in this case, because everything happened after such a fun night and everything happened so quickly. So Ashley was a very spunky Spitfire woman. I don't know if that reminds you of anyone, Mike.
Yes, very, very much.
So she was full of energy. She had a generally happy, positive disposition.
Well, that's where it ends, right?
That's
there.
where it ends.
Yeah.
I'm not happy or positive.
Right.
So she loved to just laugh and joke around. And soon after graduation, Ashley married her high school sweetheart. Her mom was actually serving as her matron of honor.
Oh.
Yeah, you're my high school sweetheart.
I am.
So she did this. She got married shortly after she graduated high school. So she was very young. So the couple had 2 daughters together. This is Madeline and Jolie. But soon the girls, after they were born, the marriage, they were very young. And all of a sudden you have the responsibility of raising 2 children. And that put a lot of pressure on the relationship, and they ended up divorcing. So when Ashley wasn't working as a respiratory therapist at a rehab hospital, she was, up to her eyeballs with raising her 2 daughters. So she surrounded herself with family. She was a family-oriented person. She loved to be with her loved ones. She loved life, and she was exceptionally close with her mom. Like I said, she was her matron of honor at her wedding. She was also close with her adoptive father. So these are Jenna Fox and Joel Radaguden. So Ashley and her mom were each other's best friends. I mean, through and through. And I hope for that for our daughter.
Yep.
So in April of 2007, then Ashley went on to meet Tom Fallis. And he was a man who just seemed responsible. He was fully ready for a family, according to what he expressed to Ashley. So, and it was the very fact that he was so family oriented and wanted a large family. That's what really ultimately drew Ashley to Tom. They had the same goals in the way that the family was the center of their universes. So, however, on the other hand, Jenna and Joel were a little wary of Tom. He seemed to have a controlling personality. They were also concerned by just how quickly Ashley and Tom's relationship was progressing. Within only months of dating, Ashley realized that she was pregnant. So 2 weeks after their son, this is Blake, was born. So you would think, they were dating 9, 10, 11, less than a year by the time they had a son and went on to then get married. So very quickly. So they then settled in Evans, Colorado. This is about an hour north of Denver. Tom began working as a corrections officer within the Weld County Sheriff's Office, while Ashley was working as a respiratory therapist. And Jenna and Joel, they just noticed that Tom's job was absolutely perfect for someone that they'd said had an ego and truly thrived on telling others what to do. So they're like, oh man, he's got the perfect job for his personality. Mm-hmm. So let's just say that Jenna and Joel were not the biggest fans of Ashley's relationship with Tom.
Sounds like it.
So Tom went on to adopt Ashley's daughters after their biological father gave up his parental rights. So because Ashley's family was very bothered by just how quickly everything was moving, they actually tried to sit her down and maybe talk her out of it.
Yeah, just at least see like, okay, you see that this is all happening very quickly, and just at least talk some like common sense and just be like, okay, are you sure you want to do this?
Right, that she's getting some clarity in the situation, that she understands, that this is a big deal.
And clearly, she might even be the type of person that jumps into things, just like she did with her high school sweetheart, and not nothing against it. Just,
no.
See that, okay, you've made this decision before. Let's make sure this is the right one. Here's the reasons why it might not be.
Well, and if you could think in your life of like very passionate people that when they love, they just love fiercely.
Yeah, and it's always within like that first month. They're like, yeah, we love each other. We're talking about moving in. It's like, ooh, I don't know if that's a good idea.
Just very intense.
Yeah.
So Joel reflected that he'd waited about 7 or 8 years after beginning his relationship with Jenna before he went on to adopt Ashley and her brother. So, they were just being cautious. They were a little wary. So they were troubled by the way that Tom just seemed to he had the need to be constantly right. Like in every argument, he had to be the winner. It's like one of those personalities that can be a little overbearing, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, he sounds kind of like a prick.
I guess you could say that. So the couple argued a lot, and Tom presented himself as an aggressive person. Jenna felt that her new son-in-law was a very insecure person who wanted total control of her daughter. And that's never going to sit right with a mom.
No, or dad or anybody that likes this person.
Right. And, especially when you're describing a previously spunky, headstrong, feisty person. And sometimes you'll see like they'll begin a relationship with a controlling person and like all of that goes away. And you're seeing this meek mouse that isn't the person. Like I have experience with some loved ones. Not my family group, but my friend group.
Me too.
Who were in a situation such as this.
Yeah, we saw it happen before our own eyes. So
It's difficult.
It's tough.
So Jenna fully believed that Tom viewed her as a threat since he could see just how close she was with her daughter. And Jenna seemed to be the only person that Tom was not able to successfully isolate Ashley from. So Jenna was a threat to Tom, according to Jenna. So when Blake was only a toddler, he was diagnosed with hydrocephalus. And this is a condition where fluid builds up in the brain. And the condition is life-threatening. And Blake was requiring frequent surgeries. So obviously, his medical needs put a lot of extra stress on the family.
And Blake was the child they had together.
Yes. And, Blake was requiring Ashley's constant attention. So Jenna recognized that her daughter was extremely strong through this highly stressful, uncertain period. She was focused on the challenge of helping her son. She even became the director of the Colorado chapter of the Pediatric Hydrocephalus Foundation.
Wow.
So, you could tell that Ashley wasn't somebody to just sit by and wait for things to happen. She was going to dive headfirst and take control of the matter. So Ashley even appeared before the United States Congress in 2011 in hopes of securing funding for the condition. So Blake's chronic health issues put a massive stress on Ashley and Tom's marriage to the point that summer of 2011, this is months before the New Year's Eve party, that they were actually considering divorce. Ashley was specifically considering divorcing Tom.
That poor kid, especially now he's older and hearing like stuff like that. Like it's not the kid's fault,
Oh,
obviously.
of course not.
Like we know that as parents talking about it, but it's like you read these articles that like they put strain like no, man, these parents were incapable of communicating with each other properly to be able to get past it. I know a lot of parents
you can't say anything. I mean, to deal with a major stress like that, it's
right.
going to put stress and pressure on a relationship naturally. So there is no judgment there whatsoever. So as 2011 was coming to an end, Tom insisted that they were doing better. They were going to counseling, and Ashley had been taking medications. So according to Tom, their relationship was on the mend, and Jenna acknowledged that her daughter was overwhelmed since she just had so much on her plate, but she was absolutely not depressed. Just naturally, you're going to be overwhelmed when you're a mom of 3, one child has a special medical condition, and you're working, and you're a wife.
Yeah.
That is a lot to take on. So shortly before New Year's Eve, Ashley took a pregnancy test. And this was a very surprise because it showed a positive test result. And the reason it was a shock was because Ashley had had a tubal ligation.
Oops.
Which I know the percentages aren't, you can't ever say 100%. But she had a positive pregnancy test regardless.
Wow.
Tom felt that the positive test really had come at the right time since they were doing so well. He indicated that as a precaution, though, Ashley stopped taking her prescribed medication. This was for anxiety and depression, or maybe just anxiety. I'm not entirely sure, but it was because of her pregnancy that she decided to stop.
Well, that sucks. That's hard to deal with too. That's like you're stopping this medication that you're relying on. It's just like, uh-oh.
Right. And obviously that should be a conversation with the doctor. Yeah. So sadly, earlier on the day of the party, Ashley started bleeding, and she believed that she was suffering from a miscarriage. And despite their loss and the fact that Ashley did feel down, of course, she felt down in the dumps, they still decided to go on with their planned party that night. And 15 to 20 people ended up attending their New Year's Eve party. This included both Tom and Ashley's parents. Tom and Ashley's kids were also there, and at the time they were 9, 6, and 4. So those present indicated that Ashley was in great spirits during the party. She was talking, laughing, and dancing. And as the evening wore on, Tom was said to have gotten worked up. He began talking loudly and cursing about fantasy football. So Jenna overhears this, and she's asking him to please keep it down for the sake of the kids. Tom only grew angrier and said, "F those kids." And he elaborated that they often woke him up at night, so he did not need to be quiet for their sake.
Okay, again, Tom sounds like a prick.
So as the party was progressing, tension between Ashley and Tom began to rise to the surface. And mind you, it's a New Year's Eve party, so alcohol is involved. And anytime alcohol is involved, maybe our guards are down, our judgment might be off from what was normal.
I'll tell you one thing too. If there's one thing that's fun to be around, it's somebody that gets worked up about fantasy football stuff. I'm a guy that's in 2 fantasy football leagues, and I'll talk about it with my friends. But it's like, man,
When it comes down to it, nobody gives a shit about your fantasy football team, okay?
Including the people in your fantasy football league for the most part.
So as the party was winding down, and it was about 12:30 a.m., so about a half hour after they welcomed 2012, Tom overheard Jenna's brother, this would be Ashley's uncle, offering Ashley marijuana. Tom was adamantly against Ashley getting high, as he reminded her that her employer required her regular drug testing because she's a healthcare, employee. And as her family was getting ready to leave the house, Tom flew into a rage. He began cursing and yelling and told Ashley that she did not have a brain in her effing head. Ooh. Tom also screamed at Ashley's family as he said, "F everybody. I wish you all would die." And they sat stunned as they watched Tom march his way to his bedroom, where he then slammed the door. So that's basically how this party is ending.
I mean, he's a toddler that just lost himself, basically. It's like, man, he doesn't even have control over himself. And anytime you have like an argument with people and you become, give personal attacks, that's when like you've lost. Like if you're a type of person that says bad things to people, like just to try to hurt them, you got to like reevaluate while you're saying that.
And words can really hurt and have lasting impressions. Yeah. That was my knee-jerk reaction when we first were together. I would just say hurtful things. I mean, I don't mind admitting my faults. And I remember you saying, like, why would you say something so hurtful to somebody you love? And what do you say in response to that? Nothing, because it's straight up wrong. So I have since, over the course of, how long have we been married? 22 years?
Yeah.
You always work on yourself, try to be the better person in the relation, not the better person in the relationship. You know what I'm talking about. I know what you mean. So obviously this is an outburst. It's happening in the middle of a party. It's very awkward. So the remaining guests gathered their things to leave. Ashley followed her parents outside to say goodbye. It was about 12:40 a.m. She told them that she was planning on hosting a Super Bowl party, when is the Super Bowl? End of January, early February?
Yeah.
So we're talking about maybe a month's time from where they're standing. So she's saying, I'd like to host a Super Bowl party. I hope you guys can come. Jenna indicated that her daughter was not upset because this kind of behavior, according to Jenna and Joel, was pretty darn typical for Tom.
Horrible. That's horrible for the kids to see, too. It's just like, what a horrible guy.
Well, this becomes normal, that it's normal to blow your top over little situations. And kids watch. They watch to see how their parents are acting. It's a lot of pressure to be a parent because we want to be good examples. So Ashley gave her parents hugs and a goodbye kiss. She stood on the porch waving at them as they pulled away. And this was tragically the last time they would see their daughter alive. The only people inside the house at this point were now Ashley, Tom, their 3 children, and Tom's niece and nephew were also spending the night. So according to Tom, Ashley put the children to bed, and then she came into their bedroom in a defiant mood. He was already in there. She told him that she was going to do what she wanted to do, when she wanted to do it, and if she wanted to get high, she would. Now, her autopsy later proved that she had not smoked marijuana that night. So Tom said that he went into their closet to change his clothes when he suddenly heard the sound of a gun being cocked. And this is across the room from where he is standing. He was aware that Ashley kept a 9mm Taurus under her mattress. So when he was on his way out of the closet, and all of this I'm telling you is Tom's version of events, he saw Ashley behind the side of her bed in the vicinity of where she would have been keeping this gun. And she was crouched down. She was low to the ground. According to Tom, everything happened very quickly. He asked her what she was doing, and he suddenly heard a pop and saw smoke. He said that he immediately ran to Ashley. He held her head as he reached up, grabbed the phone, and dialed 911. So as the dispatcher picked up, they could hear Tom screaming, "You are staying here. You are not leaving me. You are not leaving me." He was frantic, and he indicated that his wife had just shot herself in the head. The call was placed at 12:50 a.m. This is 10 minutes after Joel and Jenna pulled away and Ashley was standing waving on the porch asking them to come to her hosted Super Bowl party.
When she was happy and waving and looking forward to the next thing. Yeah, just she was in a good frame of mind.
Giving hugs and kisses.
Yeah.
10 minutes later, just to give you guys perspective.
It doesn't really add up.
So only minutes into Joel and Jenna's drive, they pulled the car over to talk about what happened at Ashley's house. They were driving with Ashley's aunt and uncle. They were just all having this discussion.
Oh, they pulled over. So,
they pulled over.
So they were so much into it. Like, I mean, usually you can, talk about things in a car with each other, not have to actually pull over. But they were probably so into it, like, all right, let's just, concentrate.
Yeah. And when it's a serious conversation, you want to kind of be facing someone.
Yeah.
So they're sitting there on the side of the road talking about this situation when they see emergency vehicles speed by their car in the direction of Tom and Ashley's house. So they were immediately concerned. Joel did a quick U-turn and found a chaotic scene at the house that they had only just left.
They followed?
Yes.
So
they immediately went back to the house.
They had no reason to think that this was going to their
Right.
house unless they just had a feeling that
They had a feeling that these responses were for their daughter.
Wow.
So Tom and Ashley's oldest daughter, in the meantime, she's 9 years old. She had sent multiple emails to Joel after her mom was shot. At 10:51 a.m., this is 1 minute after the 911 call would have been made.
10:51?
I'm sorry.
12?
Thank you for the correction.
Yeah.
12:51.
Okay.
She wrote help with 3 exclamation marks. 1 minute later at 12:52 a.m., she wrote, come here, help.
This is so she's emailing her grandpa, basically.
Yes.
Okay.
And at 12:53 a.m., she wrote, she got shot. Oh, man.
A 9-year-old.
A 9-year-old.
So sad.
How desperate and scared she must have been. So when Joel and Jenna pulled up to the alarming scene, they immediately called Tom's mother to tell her to come back because clearly something bad had happened. Tom was meanwhile outside yelling and acting aggressive, and as officers arrived, he immediately informed them that he was a Weld County deputy CO2 and demanded that certain and specific officers respond to the scene.
I don't think you get the choice, buddy.
So he was acting in such an aggressive manner that the Evans officer actually had to threaten that he would be willing to use his taser on him if he needed to.
Yeah, they need to respond.
So Jenna and Joel were unable to see Ashley until she was transferred to the hospital. So it's very clear as they're pulling up that A, something terrible has happened because these emergency response cars that drove by them are now on their daughter's driveway. And 2, B, excuse me, I'm like home alone. B, they're seeing Tom on the porch, not their daughter. So where the hell is Ashley and the children? I'm sure they're thinking. So right away they know something terrible has happened. So Jenna and Joel could not be allowed into the house because the investigation has to happen. Meanwhile, Ashley was transferred to the hospital with severe brain trauma from a single gunshot wound to the head, and she was sadly pronounced dead at 3:44 a.m. Jenna said that it was incredibly unbelievable, something you could never prepare yourself for, to see your child lying in a bed with a bullet hole through them.
I'm sure that sounds terrible.
Just devastating. So Evans, Colorado, where Tom and Ashley had been living, it was actually a very peaceful community. According to responding officers, it's very low crime. And in the 8 years that one officer had been working in Evans, he had dealt with maybe 1 or 2 armed robberies.
Wow.
So despite the fact that Tom told the responding officers that Ashley shot herself, he was brought into the station for an interview. He was still covered in his wife's blood. And in the meantime, his parents were watching the children. So he told investigators that he saw Ashley kneel next to the bed where she would have stored her gun, and she shot herself in the head as he was exiting their closet. So right off the bat, investigators were suspicious, as neighbors told them that they heard yelling around this time. Mm-hmm. One young neighbor, this is Chelsea Arrigo, who lived directly behind Tom and Ashley, said that she was laying in bed watching TV when she heard an argument between a man and a woman coming from the direction of Tom and Ashley's house. She could hear the male yelling, "Your effing mom, your effing mom. Answer my effing question." And we know that as Jenna and Joel were leaving their house, he was extremely angry at Jenna. And he was yelling at Ashley's family, telling them that he hated them and that he hoped they would all effing die. So then, Chelsea, the neighbor, hears a female voice yelling, "Get off me." So Ashley, who had fresh bruises on her legs, Ashley did. She had fresh bruises on her legs. Tom, meanwhile, had fresh scratches to his torso.
Okay.
He said this is something that happened after he recently shaved his chest for the first time. He said he had never shaved his chest before. He did not realize just how itchy it would be. He said that he found himself scratching at his chest a lot, and that's what caused the scratches.
Okay.
So later DNA testing was done. It did prove that Tom's DNA was under Ashley's fingernails, but your DNA might be under my fingernails right now.
Yeah, it better be.
Oh, get the hell out of here. So reports indicate that Tom and Ashley's children were not properly interviewed as they did not bring in professional forensic child psychiatrists. When they were questioned by officers, the two older children said that they heard yelling in their parents' bedroom. 6-year-old Jolie made a startling statement that before the yelling began, she heard Dad getting the gun ready and shooting her 3 times.
Wow.
So because
these kids are brilliant, by the way.
Well, because the bedroom door was closed, though, Jolie wasn't able to actually see Tom holding the gun. There was also evidence of only 1 gunshot versus 3, as Jolie indicated, to investigating officers. So because of these inconsistencies, they dismissed her statements. They were worth nothing. So Tom denies what the neighbor said and indicates that Ashley never said the words, "Get off me." They also told him the location where Ashley had been shot at the back of her head was not a spot where she would have done it herself. Tom adamantly denied having anything to do with the fact that Ashley was shot.
So you said in the back of her head?
Like towards the back.
Okay.
Like in an area that was doable, but not typical.
Yeah, if you say towards the back, then it means like past the side. So it's not the front,
Right.
It's not the side. It's probably, back towards this direction,
Right.
which your hand could do. It sounds like it's just that that typically, if you're going to shoot yourself in the head, it's not going to be from behind, unless you want to frame your husband. I mean, then maybe.
Right. And you wouldn't think that would be the case.
I mean,
when somebody is in such a great deal of distress, are they really looking to frame someone for murder?
But if I'm looking to frame someone, this guy seems to be the type to frame.
So the story back at Ashley and Tom's house was not fitting with the picture that Tom's story was painting. Investigators found framed pictures that had been on the bedroom wall that appeared to have been knocked from the walls. They were on the ground. So obviously this is indicative of a struggle.
Absolutely, which Tom never mentioned.
Right. There were also divorce papers sitting front and center on the dresser.
Oh, man. Tom, you suck, man. You're such an idiot. God, you suck.
There was also a large flashlight that was sitting on the floor near where Ashley was shot that was just highly out of place.
Your story doesn't even add up, Tom. It's like you're so off.
So on top of this, obviously the evidence itself is painting a suspicious picture that shows that they were fighting and divorce was brought up.
Clearly.
On top of this, guests from the party told police that Tom had been very angry, literally 10 minutes earlier.
Right.
As the party was coming to an end, as they watched him scream, "I wish you would all effing die."
Nice.
So after questioning, Tom was released without being charged, something that, Ashley's family, meanwhile, was shocked about. They were firm on the fact that there was absolutely no way that Ashley would have taken her own life and left her children. This is a mother that's standing before Congress to pass things along to help her child's medical condition. So only days after her death, it was January 5th, 2012. This is before forensic testing was even complete. The coroner ruled Ashley's death a suicide. She had stopped taking her medications for her mental health issues cold turkey after she discovered she was pregnant. And 2 months later, the case was officially closed. And Jenna was absolutely stunned. She knew just how dedicated Ashley was in regards to Blake's health issues. Now free of all charges, Tom moved to Indiana from Colorado with his children so that he could attend graduate school. So now not only had Jenna and Joel lost their daughter, but now their 3 grandchildren were moving across the country to Indiana.
So including Ashley's kids.
Yes,
Wow.
because he had officially adopted them.
Gosh.
So in order to keep their relationship with them, they maintained a relationship with Tom. They knew that they had to.
Yeah.
Joel indicated that their love for the kids outweighed their hatred of Tom.
That's good.
So life went on as it must, despite the grief over the sudden loss of Ashley, the full belief that she had not taken her life.
Now, keep in mind, this is the same county that Tom works in, right?
Evans, he's a Weld County, and Evans County officers responded to the scene.
Oh.
I do believe some of his cohorts from Weld County had arrived as well.
Yeah, so you got to wonder, like, how is it like dismissed so quickly? Like, this is clearly something that requires further investigation.
Right, and the red flag was that it was closed before all the pieces of the puzzle were complete, like certain forensic tests, like labs and such like that.
Like, anybody touching this from the administrative side should be like fired and have all their pensions taken away.
You just don't close a case before all the pieces are exposed, and they weren't. So despite the fact that the case was closed and ruled a suicide, they were forced to go on with their lives, right. Jenna and Joel.
You have no choice.
So as 2 years passed, it was early 2014, and Joel and Jenna remained convinced that Tom had gotten away with murder. They believed that he killed Ashley in a fit of anger, likely because she was threatening divorce, hence the divorce papers on the dresser. So it was about this same time when a reporter, this is Justin Joseph, got a phone call from a source within law enforcement who felt that something about Ashley's case just wasn't right. So based on this call, Justin began speaking with neighbors who had initially spoken with police. Then in April of 2014, there was a break in the case when a young neighbor of Ashley and Tom's, this is Nick Glover, he was only 15 years old at the time that Ashley was shot, told Justin that he saw Tom walk out of his house, meaning Tom's house. So as he and his family were watching from the window, this is Nick Glover and his family, they were ducking down behind the windowsill so that Tom couldn't see them watching him. So they watched as he approached his parents and told them, "Oh my God, I can't believe I did it." After he repeated himself 3 or 4 times, his parents were trying to understand what it was Tom was saying to them. They asked him what he was talking about. And this is when Tom said, "I shot her." So according to Nick, he did tell this story to an Evans police officer. This is Michael Yates. Yates wrote down his full statement. After Justin reported Nick's story, a sheriff's deputy who was at the scene came forward to say that he had also heard Tom admit that he shot Ashley.
So a police officer heard that.
Right. So Nick Glover, the neighbor,
the 15-year-old.
is telling an officer, This is Michael Yates.
Right.
Michael Yates wrote it down. And then another officer is saying that he also heard Tom.
He heard Tom. So directly from Tom, not some other kid.
He himself heard. So 2 people now.
That is damning.
So Nick's mom, this is Kathy Glover, Nick is the boy that's watching from the window, told Justin that she had gotten a call that night from the neighbor who lived behind Tom and Ashley. This is the person I mentioned earlier. This is Chelsea Arrigo. And Chelsea said, "Tell me you called police. Your neighbor just shot his wife."
Well, your neighbor too, Chelsea.
Right. However, in Yates' official police report, he wrote that according to Kathy Glover, Chelsea said, "Your neighbor just shot herself." So it was written in a way that Kathy Glover said, "I did not say that. I said, tell me you called police because your neighbor just shot his wife." Whereas it was written down that her neighbor shot herself.
Well, that's why we need audio recordings of these things. You can't, it's the game of telephone.
It's hearsay, he said, she said. So this is clearly a major discrepancy. So for 2 years, the Glovers, the neighbors of Ashley and Tom, fully believed that their statements had been properly recorded, and they believed for whatever reason, the Evans PD just declined to prosecute. They gave their statements, that was the end of it. Now, 2 years later, they're realizing that their statements were recorded improperly. So they were stunned now in 2014 when they realized that their statements had either been written down incorrectly, changed, or omitted. So now it was one person's word against the others, as Yates insists that Nick Glover never told him that he actually heard Tom confessing to his parents. He also insists that Kathy did not say that, according to Chelsea, Tom shot Ashley. It was Chelsea that heard Ashley scream, "Get off me." And for whatever reason, they never ever held a follow-up interview with Chelsea to clarify what she heard that night. Ashley's family believe that the Evans PD is involved in a cover-up to disguise Ashley's death as a suicide versus a homicide.
Absolutely.
But the big question remains is why? Why would they ever want to do this?
Because he's part of the Brotherhood or whatever.
So Chief Brandt within the Evans PD insists that there is absolutely no cover-up. He acknowledges that, yes, there were some mistakes that were made by officers. He acknowledges that they should have gone over and re-interviewed Chelsea, who said she heard a male and a female actively yelling and fighting at that point, and heard your effing mother from the man, and then the woman screaming, "Get off me." But that never happened. Also, he could give no explanation as to why the case was closed despite the fact that lab reports were still pending. How do you close a case before you have all the pieces?
Like something was hurried.
Right.
Like they're just like, okay, close it out. Let's get it all done. Let's let him move to Indiana and get off this, and then we won't have to talk about it again. Yeah.
So Brandt cannot explain why the case was closed so quickly, despite the fact that there was still a lot of circumstantial evidence that was pointing to foul play. Guests left the Fallis home at 12:40 a.m. They saw that Tom was in an extremely agitated, angry state. He was yelling, cursing, slamming the bedroom door. And not 10 minutes later, Ashley was dead. The framed pictures were pulled off the wall. Divorce papers were on the desk. Neighbors reported hearing yelling. Ashley's legs had fresh bruises. Tom's chest had fresh scratches.
Tom's story makes absolutely zero sense. Like none of it adds up. Like it's like this is so clearly not the way that it happened.
Right. So the case was closed despite the fact that lab tests were still pending. So according to Chief Brandt, his less experienced officers called in the Colorado Bureau of Investigation for backup and then later closed their own investigation. Brandt indicates that he cannot answer why the case was closed so quickly, despite these red flags. He said he is not in charge of running the investigation, so he does not know.
Now, so obviously, the chief isn't involved in every single investigation, but at the same time, this is probably the biggest thing that's ever happened in this county ever. So, or in this town, whatever, Evans PD.
Right.
So, and yeah, the buck stops at you. So don't say like you cannot ever like. I was kind of impressed with what he was saying the whole time. Like, yeah, I should have been more involved, or there was mistakes made. Like he mentioned that, but then he starts saying, "Well, I wasn't directly involved." It's like, okay, well, now, and it's my less experienced officers that you are responsible for training properly. You piece of garbage.
Exactly.
So the buck stops at you, you piece of shit. So let's get it done and figure it out.
So according to Brandt, he's scratching his own head when in 2014, all of a sudden he's seeing that there's issues in the case. So this was all with this reporter, Justin's reports. 2 years later, he's like, oh, I didn't even know there were issues. So because of Justin's reporting, the case was reopened and a new investigation began, which was handled by a larger neighboring police department in Fort Collins. So Jenna and Joel were elated with the fact that a fresh set of eyes would be further investigating Ashley's case. They realized that it would never bring their daughter back, but they did hope that it would reveal the truth, because how do you accept the fact that you're being told your child committed suicide and you fully believe, based on everything, that it just didn't happen? No one ever wants to believe that their loved one was suffering to that extent and would do such a thing. I realize that. But, it's the whole picture in the story.
Well, and also to get Tom off the streets because he's capable of doing this again.
Right. And he's got your grandkids.
Yeah.
So when Justin tried to speak with Tom, who was on a return visit to the area, he refused. He said the case had already been closed. He had nothing more to say on the matter. So in an odd twist, despite the fact that 2 years had gone by, Tom is now suddenly producing a typed letter from Ashley where she wrote, "Dear Tom, I am sorry for your pain. I am a failure at everything. I find myself not even liking my children. I do love them. I just cannot take this life any longer."
This is fantastic because now if they can somehow figure out that this was done, post mortem, then they can, nail them.
So this typed letter was followed by a handwritten note where Ashley wrote that she was broken and has done all I can. So to Jenna, this made absolutely no sense that Tom had sat on these letters for 2 years.
No.
Producing these letters that Ashley supposedly wrote immediately after she had taken her own life. Why wouldn't he have given it then?
And also, it just so happens that they pop up once Tom starts to get some smoke about being re-interviewed.
Right. So the grand jury indicted Tom for Ashley's murder in November of 2014, nearly, years after her death. So the following day, he was arrested in Indiana. It's likely at this point that, with these years behind him, that he was probably in the clear and free to move forward with his life and his children. So after his arrest, the children were cared for by Tom's parents, and Tom was eventually released on bail. He was not allowed to leave Colorado, though. So Jenna and Joel felt tremendous sense of relief that the justice, was potentially going to take place. So according to the indictment, after the guests left the party, the argument obviously continued between Tom and Ashley as they argued in their bedroom. Tom grabbed a 9mm Taurus handgun. He held the gun to the right side of Ashley's head before he pulled the trigger. And while still in contact with Ashley, he lowered her to the floor. He held her head and called 911 as he screamed into the phone to the dispatcher that his wife had just shot herself. So 48 Hours hired a forensic animator. This is Scott Roeder, and he owns a company called The Evidence Room. So it was his job to determine the most probable scenario as to what happened to Ashley in the early morning hours of January 1st, 2012. He took all the measurements from the crime scene. He reviewed all the available evidence and photos, created an animation based on Tom's version of events. It was clear that because suicide was quickly assumed, no investigation was really done. So Tom's version of events omits why the pictures that previously hung on the walls were strewn on the floor, why neighbors heard Ashley's screams, and why the large Maglite flashlight lay on the floor near Ashley's body, where it was just clearly out of place.
And why divorce papers were out.
Right. So Scott believed that the flashlight was somehow involved in the incident and referred to the bruises to Ashley's legs and speculated that Tom could have used it to knock Ashley to her knees before he shot her, like maybe hit her in the legs to take her down to the ground and then put the gun to her head.
In my opinion, I think Tom is obviously a loser a-hole, but I don't think that would happen. Like, why would you go and hit somebody in the legs? Like, that just sounds stupid.
Well, he is, amongst the police officers, and that's how they could take a suspect
They
down.
are trained that way, yeah. Okay.
Right, and the fact that this huge flashlight is on the bedroom floor where it doesn't belong in the midst of this chaotic, awful scene, and Ashley has fresh bruises to her legs.
Yeah.
So Chief Brandt was unsure if the flashlight was investigated or even where it ended up.
Oh, no kidding, because Chief Brandt doesn't know anything about anything.
I don't know.
Oh, it wasn't my fault. It was my officers. Oh, the ones under you that you're responsible for. It's ultimately you. Obviously, he wasn't on scene, but like you take a responsibility.
Right. So the frustrating and really hard thing here, though, is that Scott Roeder concluded that there was a 50-50 chance that Tom's story was plausible, that Ashley had taken her own life. It was also just as equally possible that Tom was responsible for shooting Ashley.
Yeah,
Both scenarios fully fit his investigation and the picture that he painted.
Okay.
Yes. So, and again, he had this company that puts together, it's recreating the scene of the crime or not crime in this forensic animation. In both cases, sides worked out.
I think he's being nice by saying 50-50. I think, there is a non-zero chance that the suicide happened. I'd probably, if I had to guess, obviously I didn't put all this together, but it sounds like 20% chance of suicide and 80% chance of a murder.
So in the hundreds of cases that Scott has been involved in, he said that the appropriate way to handle a case such as this is to take it off the bat with a homicide investigation and then conclude later that it was a suicide, not the other way around.
Yeah, worst case scenario
immediately assuming it's a suicide.
Yeah.
So Tom's trial began in March of 2016, and his defense attorney immediately established her client's innocence, insisting that Ashley had taken her own life because of the terrible pain she was suffering inside. She indicated that Ashley had documented mental illness, she could be impulsive, self-destructive, and because of that, she shot herself in a moment of crisis with her own handgun, meaning that yes, she was standing on the porch talking to her parents, planning a Super Bowl party, because at that moment in time, she hadn't intended to do what she did, according to the defense attorney. She did it in a moment of impulse. So the defense attorney claimed that because Ashley had been drinking heavily on the night of the New Year's Eve party, paired with the fact that she had just suffered a miscarriage, the fact that she went off her medication cold turkey, that she was likened to that of a pressure cooker. So when Ashley's uncle was cross-examined by another defense attorney, he did admit that yes, there was a history of suicide within their family. Both his mother and brother had each died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. So Ashley's therapist told the jury that he did not consider Ashley a danger to herself. And when he saw her in December of 2011, just right before this happened, she did not appear to be depressed or suicidal.
But also at that point, she hadn't had a miscarriage yet.
Yeah, but Dr. Russell Johnson did admit that he did not actually know how many pills or milligrams of Seroquel, which treats schizophrenia, bipolar, and or depression, that Ashley was taking. So when Jenna Fox took the stand, she spoke about the fact that Ashley had been fine throughout the extent of the party, and it was Tom who was the one that was acting erratically and exploding and stomping off. He told Jenna and Joel that he hated them. He wished that they would all die. And then they watched as he marched into his bedroom and slammed the door. So they're seeing one person that's in this highly agitated state versus their daughter who's calmly hugging them and planning a Super Bowl party. Who would be the likely person to be impulsive at that moment?
The guy that just wished death on people or the person that just hugged everybody?
That's the whole idea of that testimony. So
and remind me, why did Tom get so mad?
Because of multiple things, he was number one. It sounds like he's a very excitable person.
Yeah.
So even just talking about the fantasy football, he's cursing.
He's already worked up.
So Jenna tells him, Tom, please keep it down because there are kids here. Yeah. He didn't like that. He doesn't like to be told what to do. That pissed him off.
Right.
And then he overhears the uncle offering Ashley marijuana, which she ultimately did not take. And that's when he really blew the top off.
Well, why tell Jenna and Joel that I wish you would die?
Maybe because they heard him yell, use your effing brain to
and maybe
Ashley.
they're like,
and
hey,
they
don't talk
stepped
to her
in.
like that.
You know, I don't know the full extent of the full interactions, but he was pissed.
Right.
So despite his outburst, Jenna insists that Ashley was maybe a little embarrassed, but otherwise, according to them, when she was standing on the porch saying goodbye at 12:40 a.m., which was only 10 minutes before that the 911 call was placed, she was ultimately fine. Before they drove away, Ashley spoke again of these future plans with the Super Bowl party. So next door neighbor Nick Glover took the stand. He said that he clearly remembered that night and the fact that Tom confessed to shooting Ashley to his parents. He said that he was 100% sure that it was Tom who stood on his driveway and told his parents that he had shot his wife. On the other hand, of course, Tom's parents are adamantly denying that their son ever made such a confession. But of course, as parents, they're, could potentially be protecting their son.
Sure.
So Nick's mother, Kathy, told the jury about the 1 a.m. phone call that she received from their neighbor. This is Chelsea Arrigo, who said that it was Tom who shot Ashley. However, when Chelsea took the stand, she indicated that she doesn't even remember placing the phone call and only recalls hearing some arguing. She does not recall any specific words spoken. She denies hearing Ashley scream, "Get off me." However, Chelsea fully admits that she was intoxicated that night. It was New Year's Eve. So, this caused a lot of confusion in the situation because she couldn't remember.
Yeah, there goes the whole, that side. And these houses must have been close together because you heard all the houses that are made nowadays are 10 feet apart. So it's like if you have your neighbor right behind your house, they can hear things, and then that kid right next door.
Right.
But that really hurts the case that if she can't remember what. And that's why you investigate immediately instead of 2 years after the fact.
Right. When everyone's minds are fresher. But you're talking about Kathy, who's saying, I got this phone call from Chelsea. Did anyone check the phone records? Because Chelsea's saying, I don't even remember placing the phone call. Did someone check the phone records to see, did Chelsea place this 1 a.m. call to Kathy?
Right.
That would answer the question. Maybe she didn't say what she said, but it proves there was a phone call.
Yeah, but who's calling at 1 a.m. on New Year's Eve? Everybody's going to sleep
right at this time.
Or whatever, or partying or doing something. They're not calling their neighbor.
And then you have Nick, who is specifically saying with 100% certainty, I was hiding behind the windowsill. I was watching this interaction. Now you have Chris Graves. This is a Weld County Sheriff's deputy. He indicated that this is the guy that overheard Tom confess to killing his wife.
Yep.
According to Chris, he heard Tom screaming, "I can't believe I shot her. I can't believe she's dead."
I mean, that's like hook, line, and sinker right there. A police officer that heard that and can confirm that they heard that. Man.
Yes. So, however, his credibility was questioned since he did not notify his supervisors about the statements until 2 years later after the case was reopened because of that reporter.
Because, like, you could clearly see your department is trying to hush this and try to get it passed. Like, I don't know. Like, is he trying to...
Well, he's with the Weld County Sheriff's Office.
Okay.
So that's the department that Tom actually works with, not the Evans PD, who Ashley's family believe is involved in a cover-up.
Okay.
So that's the difference there. So, he is questioned, well, why didn't you come forward and say this earlier? He admits that this was an error on his part. He did not draft a report about what he heard because he said it wasn't my case. But that's a very important piece of this case.
That's one of the most important things about being a cop is calling out the things that you hear and then seeing things that aren't right and calling that out too.
Mm-hmm. So the state's expert, this is Dan Gilliam, he spent 400 hours examining the case. He explained to the jury where Ashley's head would have been had she shot herself. She would have been bent at the knees. On cross-examination, he admitted that the most probable result of the shot to her head was the result of it being self-inflicted. However, the prosecution called a different expert. This is John Priest. He said that Tom had to have been near Ashley when the gun went off, to the point that they may have even been in contact. It's likely they were struggling with the gun as it went off, which was a completely conflicting theory to what the defense, their expert, was saying.
Yeah,
so here we are back again at this 50-50.
Canceling each other out.
Right. So the prosecution is now tasked with convincing the jury that without a reasonable doubt, Tom absolutely had that gun. He held it to Ashley's head. He pulled the trigger. Joel and Jenna were hopeful that the jury would find Tom guilty, obviously. Now, I will remind you, we also have the piece of the puzzle where the 6-year-old daughter also made very scary statements about he got the gun and he shot mommy.
Was that allowed?
That was completely not allowed.
Right.
I'm just reminding you as a listener in this case that it is a piece of the puzzle. It is not a piece in this trial. So, obviously, Ashley's family is waiting on bated breath to see what's going to happen. So after deliberating for only 3.5 hours, the jury came back with a verdict.
Only 3.5. That's like, that kind of makes me think that they might say guilty. But I mean, if I'm looking at the evidence, I'd say not guilty because there's not enough. And it would have been so nice to be able to like test his hands for gunpowder and things like
right.
Just like that expert said, you go with the worst case because it's so much worse to go back years later and try to uncover everything all over again.
Right.
So you go with a homicide rather than the suicide investigation is what I'm trying to say. So I'm going to say because of the speed, I'm going to say they found him guilty.
They found him not guilty.
Okay, that makes sense.
Which you can't blame the jury for that because, again, you have to be without a shred of doubt that Tom was the guy that did it. Reasonable.
Not a shred.
Excuse
reasonable.
me.
I got yelled at
correct
once.
myself.
And
Thank
it's
you.
Correct.
You're right. So thank you for that. So I spoke off there, but beyond a reasonable doubt that Tom was the one that did this. And the sad part is it is truly because the investigation was lacking. That's what this comes down to. Like Mike just said, had they tested Tom's hands for gunshot residue, had they followed up with Chelsea, had they looked into the phone records, did she call Kathy? Had they recorded the statements properly from the neighbors as well as the officer from the Weld County Sheriff's? I mean, we're talking about a lot of errors here, not just one, but many.
And did Tom have any story to back up why the pictures were broken?
Not to my knowledge.
Why he had divorce papers out and all that stuff? Like
Nope.
That's probably the most damning thing. Like, yeah, the kid next door, Nick, that said he can hear something, like that's tough because he's a kid, and not that kids can't hear things, but...
I mean, he was 15. He wasn't like 3,
right?
Yeah. And he said with 100% certainty, I was kneeling in that window. I heard what I heard. And on top of that, you have this officer saying, I heard the same thing.
Yeah. And that's, oh man, like they should have gotten him, man. And now he's just free and going do whatever he wants.
Jenna and Joel were shocked that Tom somehow managed to get away with murder yet again. 2 jurors explained how they came to their verdict. They said that the case seemed straightforward. They believed that Ashley was in a dire mental state, which led her to take her own life.
I mean, it does, it's pretty damning that she has a mental or a family history of
Yeah,
suicide
but
and
what does
stuff.
that have to do with it? I might have a family tree that my uncle was a murderer and a whatever. It means nothing to me.
To me, I put genetics largely into everybody's day to day.
Yeah,
I think you have it in you. Like to end your own life is a big decision, obviously.
Of course.
And it's not like a logical decision. It's something that there's something in your brain that makes you think that this is a decent idea, and it's a really sad, horrible place to be, unfortunately.
Right.
And things like alcohol and the lack of taking the pills and drugs that are supposed to like help you with this, like that's a recipe for disaster.
Right. And there are two sides of the story, and the jury had to weigh them all out because obviously the defense is going to paint Ashley as someone that stopped her medication cold turkey. They were in a heated state, and this is what she just made a knee-jerk reaction. It wasn't planned, but it was a knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to look at both sides, and I still view Tom as a prick, obviously.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't think there's really any disputing based on the things that Ashley's family have said. So juror Devana Mijares believed that the couple had an intense argument that night and didn't think that the case should even have been reopened and gone to trial. It's her opinion that the case was only reopened because the pressure from the media.
Mm-hmm.
So reporter Justin Joseph felt that the police department did not do their job on the night of Ashley's death. I don't think there's any disputing that. I am not a hater of the police at all. It's a job I have mad props and respect for because
it's thankless.
It's thankless. It's they're seeing the worst of humanity.
And you have so many details you have to cross and check and make sure everything, because a lot of these cases are just kind of like open and close. It's like, okay, I mean, most of the things they run into is like, yeah, this is clearly a suicide, or this is usually what you see is what you get, but like this type of situation gets amplified because of the media and because it's like, salacious, and it's just like, if they went back, sure, they'd like to take a look at things, but it's at the same time, it's their responsibility to make sure that's their job.
Yeah.
So you can't afford to make mistakes, unfortunately.
I know it's kind of like it when you're a brain surgeon or a ICU nurse. Like you that's a position where you can't afford to make errors.
And you
could be a salesman and forget a follow-up call. That's not going to make a big difference.
Right.
But we're talking about, a
Life and
huge
death.
thing. Yeah. So it's, Justin Joseph's belief that had they have done a thorough investigation, like you say, starting with the idea that it's a homicide and then eventually concluding it's a suicide, that jury could have potentially had much more solid evidence that could have solidified that guilty verdict, but they didn't have it.
And then you have it that Tom was part of, the policing at some point. Like that just kind of reeks. Every single time you hear that, like you should make extra sure that you're like looking into all the details, because you don't want to make a bad name for the police.
Right.
The police don't need help with that when the media's already at them for the most part. So
Justin Joseph believes what I feel, that the jury made the right decision because of the lack of evidence. I would have had to have said the same thing.
Yeah.
So regardless of the fact that Tom was deemed innocent, Ashley's family remained firm on their belief that she would have never taken her own life and left her children behind. Jenna and Joel feel disgusted that their daughter's feisty Spitfire personality was portrayed in a negative light during the trial. They insist that Ashley was a passionate person who absolutely loved life. They wanted to make it their mission to preserve their daughter's memory in her children's minds and keep her spirit alive, that their children, because they were so young at the time of their mother's sudden death, it's important for them that they know who their mom was as a person. In the meantime, Madeline, Jolie, and Blake remain in Indiana under their father's custody, and Joel and Jenna do have visitation rights. And that is the sad story of the death of Ashley Fallis.
Yeah, that last name's unfortunate. I have to say
Fallis.
Well, Fallis
Phallic.
Phallus means penis.
Oh.
So PHALLUS.
I mean, why did what? How old are you? That's the question. Like, why is your mind always there?
I don't know. I can't explain
What's wrong with you?
Well, it's a horrible last name. If I had that last name, I would change it to Fallon.
Your last name is Pernecki.
Yeah, and it's nice.
It's weird.
It rolls right off the tongue.
It's weird.
So is yours, by the way.
When I met Mike, somebody was talking about him. He wasn't at the bagel shop where we met at the time. We were 16. And they're like, oh, Pernecki's not here. I go, Pernecki? Who the hell is that? And they're like, Mike. I was like, what a weird last name. I actually said those words out loud.
And now it's yours.
Never, ever thinking in 10 trillion years that this bozo would be my husband, but I'm glad that you are.
Hey, likewise.
But seriously, you have like the mentality of like a 15-year-old.
It's like saying penis over and over again. It's like it means the exact same thing.
I did this research for this investigation. I never thought that.
Well, because you didn't know it until now.
That's the difference. I know phallic.
Yeah, and that's where it comes from, is the phallus. So like type in Google phallus and you'll see pictures of wangs probably from like way back in the day. Oh man. So anyway, sorry to go off on that tangent, but hey, real quick, now that we're back in the saddle, we got all these weekly, podcasts coming out. If you've listened to any of our podcasts 3 or more times, we have this rule that it's time to put out in the form of leaving us a review on one of the websites, or at least going to subscribe to our YouTube channel or something like that. Leave a comment on Spotify, or leave a 5-star review on Apple. If you think less than 5 stars, you probably shouldn't be listening anyway. So, go ahead, moving along. There's a lot of good podcasts out there.
Well, and we do appreciate you, helping us out in any way that you can. We appreciate you just being here and listening to us. We thank you from the bottom of our hearts.
Yeah, and if you're a patron or a subscriber, you hear us gush about you all the time. We just talk so well about our anybody that's subscribing to anything we do. We really very much appreciate it. So yeah, go ahead, check us out, do those sort of things. We appreciate it. And if you don't have the scratch, I totally understand that. Just go like and subscribe our YouTube channel, give us some likes on Instagram. That's all good.
Yeah.
Comments on Spotify. There's Spotify comments. Those are pretty cool.
Yeah, so thank you guys so much for being here. Happy New Year. We hope that you're well, that you're safe and happy, and we love you. And until next time, bye.